Hey everybody, welcome to our third unit of our course here, which addresses chapters 8, 9, and 10. And just a few quick remarks about the chapters in this section here. The first two there, chapters 8 and chapters 9, these are really extensions of your chapter 7 on the experimental research strategy. However, these are labeled design chapters here. You'll see in chapter 8, you're going to look at what are known as between subjects designs, and then in chapter 9 you're going to look at what are known as within subjects designs. So these are our very first two type of design chapters in our course here. And remember that difference between a strategy and a design. A strategy, you might recall, is simply the kind of question you're going to ask in the first place, like, if you want to explain behavior versus if you want to describe behavior. But a design issue when it comes to research, you may recall, that has to do with the execution, or if you will, the deployment, or the way you're going to ask that question in the first place. So not the question you're going to ask, but the way you're going to ask it. And certainly in between and within subjects designs, you're going to see sometimes what we do is we decide we're going to go ahead and ask a question by comparing different groups of people. That's the between subjects chapter there. But sometimes we're going to try to answer a question by saying, well, how about if we just take a look at the same group of people? And that would be your within subjects design there. And one of the things you're going to learn there in chapter 8 is that it's really, to a large extent, just a repeat of what you already got there in chapter 7 on the experiment, because the way that we handled chapter 7 with the experiment is that we really took a between subjects approach. And that may not make a whole lot of sense now, but by the time you're done with chapter 8, you're probably going to scratch your head and go, wow, we just learned a lot of what we already knew. And that's what you're going to do. But you're going to have a few little caveats and nuances I'm going to add that I really didn't bother with there in chapter 7, and for good reason, because that would have been putting the cart in front of the horse in some ways there. But you are going to pick up a few new things, and especially the issue of how we have to be concerned about the makeup of our groups in these studies, particularly the issue of individual differences or participant variables. We're going to really drill down into that into this chapter here, so just kind of be ready for that. And in chapter 9, our within subjects chapter, you're going to learn that there are some really unique issues when you take a single group of people, which is what the within subjects chapter is all about as an experimental design there. And when you put them through every possible level of your independent variable or each kind of treatment that you have, well, that poses some real unique threats to your internal validity. And there are some ways that we have to, of course, try to control that, which we haven't talked about at all yet. So we'll get into that in that particular chapter, so you'll learn all about that. And in chapter 10, our last chapter in this unit here, this is a strategy chapter, the quasi-experimental and non-experimental research strategies there. And you're going to learn here that these really shouldn't be thought of as sort of like the poor cousins, to the experimental strategy there. They are actually of great value because sometimes, ethically and practically, we just can't do a true experiment, yet you still want to compare groups. Because these strategies are all about comparing groups of persons, but without manipulation and without control of your variables, which you may recall are the defining features of a true experiment. So hopefully you haven't forgotten that already, because you need to remember that, or else you might feel a little lost when you get to that chapter 10 and chapter 8 and 9 for that matter there too. So, but of course there are some unique limitations or problems that go with the territory with quasi and non-experiments, and of course I'll tell you all about that. And you're also going to find embedded within this chapter, chapter 10, there are a number of research designs that are unique as a quasi-experimental approach or a non-experimental approach. So just kind of get ready for that too. So we're going to see the designs not in a separate chapter like we saw in chapters 8 or 9. They're going to be actually included there as part of chapter 10. Okay? All right, and you're also going to see in chapter 10 too, if you've ever had like a lifespan course in psychology or a child psychology course, you probably learned about what are known as developmental research designs, cross-sectional designs, and longitudinal designs. Well, you're going to go ahead and revisit those in this chapter 10 here too. So that's probably going to ring a bell, and those are pretty easy too, you're going to see. So I'm not going to actually lecture about those. I'm going to assign those for your homework. Okay? All right. Well, that's all I'm going to say to kind of get you warmed up. And go ahead and get started on your first chapter, chapter 8 there. Okay? And I'll see you around as we work our way through the rest of the course here.